Most Americans have no idea that ancient cities once dotted the ancient North American landscape.
Very, very few of us were conscious of the immensity of a place like Monk's Mound at Cahokia, opposite St. Louis, which is bigger in its footprint than the Great Pyramid at Giza.
The knowledge embedded in these earthworks and encoded in their structure is anything but primitive. It's remarkable.
What I've learned now is just how amazing they were in terms of their knowledge of the solar system and of mathematics.
Artifacts of iron were found, artifacts of hardened copper, stone tablets with writing. Regular farmers just plowing their fields would really turn up literally bushel baskets of arrowheads, spear points, etc. And these things were commonplace. Some people, such as Caleb Atwater and Squire and Davis, they believe the artifacts that they were finding around these mounds and cities and earthen structures, that this was representative of an advanced civilization. Doctrine of Manifest Destiny allowed the United States government to classify the Native Americans as savages by their terminology. And by calling them savages, that would allow them to push them aside and basically claim their lands as America expanded in a westward direction.
Politically, it would have been impossible for them to have taken lands away from Indians, from any indigenous peoples, if they viewed them as having rights even close to what they had as American citizens.
Manifest Destiny, the idea that American First Nations had never achieved anything worth preserving, has resulted in the wanton destruction of thousands and thousands of earth constructions, mounds, embankments, figures, and settlements.
Science did tell them that there were certain races that were superior and some that were inferior.
We would say that's bad science, where you want to discount information because it kind of doesn't fit what you think you see. And what you see is what people saw at the time were these savages who were in this pitiful state.
I collected DNA from and analyzed DNA from a couple of different Hopewell cemetery populations. When we looked at DNA from these two different Hopewell populations from Illinois and Ohio, we found that there were 5 primary mitochondrial DNA lineages present. These lineages have become designated by letter names in the scientific world. And the ones that we see in Native American populations, both living today and in these Hopewell cemeteries, were the mitochondrial lineages A, B, C, D, and X. And these 5 lineages are ones that are common today in Native Americans, and they were the ones that were present in these ancient Hopewell communities. When we look at the distribution of Haplogroup X in the Americas, we see that it's present in about 3% of all Native Americans, but it's more common in some populations. In particular, peoples who live in the upper Great Plains exhibit much higher frequencies of Haplogroup X, sometimes up to 25 or 30 or even 50% in some samples that have been studied.
DNA science apparently settles the biological questions of who these ancient, advanced Hopewell mound builders were. But where else is this DNA found? And where did it originate?
The form of Haplogroup X that's present in the Americas is known as Haplogroup X2a. And this specific type is defined by a number of additional mutations that Native Americans who belong to Haplogroup X share.
Haplogroup X is really a fascinating story because the X-files of Native American genetics, because it burst on the scene in 1998. Scientists didn't want to believe it, but they found a new haplogroup in addition to A, B, C, D among the Indians of the Great Lakes in particular. And that was Haplogroup X. And so immediately the scientists who have a kind of idée fixe, in my opinion, set about trying to find haplogroup X in Mongolia and Siberia, because of course all American Indians, all upstanding American Indians, came across the Bering Land Bridge chasing woolly mammoths, right? So they weren't able to find haplogroup X in Siberia. Haplogroup X was a Eurasian type. So then they started talking about, oh, well, maybe they got here by jumping across the ice in a circumpolar fashion. Okay. Well, it kind of rested there for a while. Is it true that all Native Americans came from 10 families that stumbled across the Bering Strait chasing woolly mammoths before the last ice age? I don't think mine did.
I'm haplogroup X, and on further investigation, I believe I am haplogroup X2a, which is found in the Ojibwe populations, and Sioux, and Navajo, and a couple of more that I can't even pronounce, even though I'm from this continent in North America. And there are 5 different haplogroups found in North America: A, B, C, D, and X. Yes, haplogroup X. What if haplogroup X did cross over the Atlantic and not through the Bering Strait as otherwise hypothesized? The reason that's hypothesized by some scientists in this world is because there are very few or no traces of an X haplogroup anywhere along the Asian migration route, which would cover from the Fertile Crescent, going through those mountains, I don't know all the countries, through India, through China, through like Vietnam, Asia, all those countries, Japan, over the sea, well, actually up through Siberia, and through the Yukon. Well, I will call it the Yukon today because I'm Canadian, and down through North America. But the X haplogroup has been linked to the Clovis Point arrowheads. Clovis Point arrowheads is a certain type of an arrowhead that was designed and used by hunters about 17,000 years ago in and around the areas known as today, what we know as France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, like those areas. And they came here. And they continue to survive, yes, perhaps for 5,000 more years before other peoples, the A, B, C's, D's, came over from the Bering Strait with their male counterparts. And there was lesser male counterparts that survived than females, but you'll find that throughout the world. And
also shows that not just high math, but these sites are lined up primarily with the lunar calendar. They had high math, they understood geometry, and because of the lunar calendar, they also understood the heavens, astronomy.
What I've learned now is just how amazing they were in terms of their knowledge of the solar system and of mathematics.
And the lunar calendar comes from the Mediterranean, and then they had the unit of measurement was 606. Which they call the stade. One side of the Great Pyramid from the base to the tip of the apex is 606 feet. If you square inside the octagon, which the surveyors like to call, it's a term they use, squaring the circle, and you divide that up into 4 equal parts inside of cubes, you'll find those cubes are all made of 606-foot lines per cube side. The angle of the Great Pyramid of Egypt runs 51.8 degrees. Up the slope from the base to the angle. That measurement is there, and when you come off of the baseline at Newark and you run true north and then measure that angle back to the baseline, what do we find? 51.8 degrees. So did they have the same math as the ancient Egyptians? Well, I gotta say, yeah, it sure looks like it.
It's as inspiring, I think, in its way as the NASA program to send a man to the moon.
Most of the Mediterranean societies, civilizations, ran their calendar on the lunar cycle or 13-month calendar. And that can be fully demonstrated with the Hopewell people as well. Again, another nice parallel to the Mediterranean contact.
We own the Newark Holy Stones, and these stones were found in a Hopewell mound in the 1860s. And the presumption from finding them was that perhaps the American Indians had some kind of contact with the Hebrews, or possibly they were the Hebrews. That's another idea. So we have the museum has been interested in origins.
They took it to some scholars, identified that it was probably some type of Hebrew. They took it to some rabbis living in the area, and upon looking at it, they said yes, they could read it. And it was a complete rendition of the 10 Commandments. They called it block Hebrew because they had never seen anything written like this, but they called it block Hebrew.